Hi, my name is David Chislett, and together with my co-host Alia Sandover, we are incredibly proud to present the Playful Creative Summit 2020. We think the summit is a unique thing because for the first time ever, we are bringing together playful and creativity experts under one banner during one event, and we are focused on creating a playful environment by conducting authentic conversations with professionals right across the sphere, from game designers to actual designers, artists, entrepreneurs, and creators of every type. Joining me now is Judith Germain of the Maverick Paradox. Judith is a consultant, author, and podcast host, and is the leading authority on Mavericks. So she's a keynote speaker as well, and her opinion and her articles have been published all over the place. So welcome, Judith.
Hi, David.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
We've chatted a few times before, but I've got a question for you that I haven't had an opportunity to ask, and that is, what was your favorite game or toy when you were a child?
It's going to sound really boring, but my favorite was chess, because to me it was a playful thing, because I used to have to play my dad and he would never ever let me win. So I had to so I had to find playful ways to either distract or figure out how to beat him the next move.
Right. Yeah, I don't think many people would look at chess and think that's particularly creative or playful.
Well, it is when you think, I was about 7, but I used to do a lot of reading. So I used to go back to the old days in the library, getting out all the chess books and trying to be creative by going, this master did this, but if I added it to this way and make my own thing, he won't figure that one out. So that's where the creativity came from.
Okay, so you were experimenting continuously with chess strategy from age 7.
Yeah, I can't play chess now though. Lost it all.
Well, you're probably better at it than I am. I was never particularly good. Okay, so that's an interesting discipline, that you're regularly playing chess, you are researching it, you are experimenting. Is there something that you do today in your daily life to keep that playfulness or creative flow going?
Yes, for me, I think to be playful is to know what to play with. And to be able to do that, you need to find out how a lot of things work so that you can see what happens if I move this from this place and put it there. Or also understanding the dynamics of people. Mm-hmm. So I spent a lot of time when I was younger playing, this is the Maverick in me, with people, not that they knew, but trying to do things to see what reaction that involved. So I was learning the people's responses.
Right. That's quite interesting, because according to Mel Rhodes's 4 Ps framework of creativity, there are in fact 4 pillars to creativity: the creative product, the process that you use to be creative, the environment or the press that you are creative in, and of course the 4th pillar is person, people. So you've spent a lot of your career very focused on people, in particularly Mavericks. So what's that all about? How does that fit in together with playfulness and creativity?
Well, I define Mavericks as willfully independent people. And Mavericks, the willfulness is not about like a toddler who is stamping their feet. It's a playful smirk. It's kind of like, haha. And Mavericks are pathologically curious. They spend their whole lives looking at, why does this work? How does that happen? What happens if I press this? Or what happens if I do that? And I think by looking at all the different things, you make connections that you would not have made. So Mavericks are very good at combining different things together to create something new.
Right. And how does that work? I mean, why would a Maverick be better at making connections than the average person?
I think the difference between the average person is the average person likes to become a specialist or an expert in one thing, whereas Mavericks start off with the one thing and then they say, what's the thing that is connected to that thing? And then they'll learn that, and they'll learn that, and then, so Mavericks thinks their whole life is about continuously learning. They'll never stop. So their expertise levels becomes wider and wider and wider, and that's how you can make connections between things.
Right. So they're taking a dot from over here and a dot from over here, and they're making a connection which other people wouldn't because they don't have as many dots.
Yeah. So, for example, when I was in my first job, I wanted to become a leader at some point, because my manager said that they would never promote me because I kept upsetting people. And the average normal response would have been to learn leadership skills. But mine wasn't. I went and looked at people. So I looked at persuasion, influence, dynamics, body language, transactional analysis, all that people dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at leadership techniques later. So that then enabled me to say, if I moved this from there and did that, what difference it would make? And that's a more typical Maverick response.
Right. Interesting. How would you define creativity? I mean, from your perspective, working the way that you do in the field that you do.
I would define creativity as being able to find the missing links and connections that others don't see. So, so if I was looking at creative thinking, I would say it's solving problems without being fettered by convention.
Right. Back to the Maverick thing again. Because obviously to be a Maverick, you've got to break the rules, right?
Yeah.
Why? What's so important about breaking the rules?
Because the rules are wrong most often. Sorry, that's a bit of a Maverick response. The rules are often wrong because they start from the wrong premise. So people make rules not to solve a problem, but to keep it under control, and that doesn't move things.
Right. Yeah, I always like to break rules because I feel like they're trying to keep me under control.
That too.
All right. And for you then, how does playfulness factor into that? I mean, I think I know your answer when you said, you know, the Mavericks always got a bit of a smirk, but how does playfulness factor in this?
I think most Mavericks look at life as a joyous game. It's just fun to be alive. And I think when you have an opinion like that, everything's playful. Everything's like, oh, I wonder what would happen if, and how about this? So I think socialised Mavericks, if anything, are very consistent in terms of mood. They're very stable. They don't have huge highs and huge lows constantly for the day. They're more like this because they're not toppled so much by obstacles that happen, because it's just a game anyway. Let's reset, right. Level up.
So they're always playing, essentially. They're always trying to get the skills to get through to the next level, to the next challenge.
Yeah, so they can find it very frustrating when other people don't realise it's just a game. Let's play the game.
Right. Well, talking of which, what are you working on at the moment? What are you busy with?
Let me think. A number of things, actually. As you know, I've just launched a digital magazine called the Maverick Paradox magazine, written by Mavericks, which David has written quite a lot of interesting stuff. I'm also working with a large organisation on how to make their project team more radical. So that is really fun.
Yep.
Yes, they want some more Maverick energy because they want to shake up the rest of the organisation. So I'm having to teach a very... the organisation is a public sector organisation, which means generally in the UK that they have set rules, high hierarchies, very bureaucratic, and they're asking for their team to be radical, playful, and not as consistent. So that's quite interesting.
That is interesting. I mean, I think that's a challenge that a lot of big organizations face. And what you just said there is really interesting to me because you mentioned a team, not the whole organization. How do they expect that to work? Because to my ear, that means, well, so you're going to create a bubble where everything cool happens. What happens when you need to take what they produce out of the bubble?
Well, that's part of the program, to be able to skill them up so they can do that. But the idea is that they start from there. They've created this department has never existed. So they have created a department to be the champions of this change, and then it should bubble out. So yeah, we're having to teach them resilience as well.
Right. Could you, I mean, without giving away all of your wonderful consulting intellectual property, what would be like a real top line 5-step process to go from being conservative, siloed, very rule bound to being what you're now talking about, a more maverick, a braver team or organization? 5 steps.
Well, I can give you 4 steps to be more creative. How about that? Can we compromise on that? So obviously the first is to get ready. So it's all about the planning. And then it's fluid reasoning. Have you heard of that before?
No.
So it's kind of allowing your subconscious to think. So as you know, there's lots of ways to do creative thinking. So you can do unstructured things and you can do structured things. And the fluid reasoning is the kind of the unstructured things. It's kind of like building into your process time to walk around in nature to think.
Right.
You know, it's to see what comes up in a very unstructured way. And then you're looking for those kind of eureka moments, the insight. So once you've allowed your subconscious to bubble through and you've let things go, then you can get insight and then evaluate and check in. So that's how you become creative. You're looking at, so in the fluid reasoning, you're allowing emergent thinking to come through as well. You know about emergent thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, for those people who might be watching who don't know, could you?
Oh, okay. Sorry. So let's see. So like emergent thinking is looking at things in a way that's non-linear. It's looking at the whole thing. So if you were going to describe a cloud, you wouldn't be able to describe it by saying in the linear process. You'd have to look at the whole thing, see how it works. So that's what emergent thinking is about. And a lot of organisations don't do that, and you can't do that unless you're curious and playful and looking at the whole picture.
Okay, cool. Now this sounds to me like as an individual, you are constantly on your toes, having to come up with solutions and ideas on the fly to facilitate this process.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular process that like a routine or an approach that you go through to keep yourself fresh and playful and creative?
Process. Really hate processes for myself. But what I do, I guess, is I am always learning, always looking at everything. So people are always saying to me, how did you know that? Because I seem to know something about something because I'm always following what's happening. And I spend time pondering what would happen if, even if it's outlandish. So I'm always, so part of me relaxing is just to sit there and go, what would it be like if you could walk on the moon without, an astronaut kit? What would that need to happen? So I'm constantly, and I think constantly also seeking out people who don't agree with me to find out what it is that they have.
Now, you mentioned in this program that it's extremely important to build into the day of this team, a walk in the forest or whatever, like downtime. What does that look like for you?
Funny enough, it depends on the mood I'm in, on the task. So sometimes it's dancing around the house with really loud music, looking really weird. Other times it's a complete switch of activity. So if I'm designing a program, the switch of activity might be phoning people up for just a gossip, or it might be going for a walk. It'd be something different to allow the subconscious. So one of the things that I do is I activate my subconscious consciously. So what I actually give my subconscious a question to answer. So when I was asked to, because quite often I have to come up with new models for something. So I will say to my subconscious, how does this happen? Or what makes this happen? And then I'll go away and do something else. So I'll read very widely on a subject, and lots of different opinions, lots of different stuff, and things that are tangential to the thing I'm trying to do. Then I ask my subconscious to work it out. And I actually place that sort of space in my development.
Right.
And I come back the next day and the answer's there.
Right. You've just given me two very clear reasons for two of the things that I do a lot, because when I work, I tend to work on an idea. Typically for me, that means writing something until I kind of start to get a bit stuck. And then the first thing I do is I check my email, I'll go make a cup of tea, I'll go for a walk, I'll do shopping, I'll put a load of washing in, and then I'll come back and I'm like, oh yeah, I got it. And then boom, I'm able to carry on and just do something. So that's not just because I'm like ADD, it's because I'm actually processing.
Yeah, I think the key is allowing the mind to be quiet, isn't it? So that it can think subconsciously.
Yeah. All right. So someone walks in through the door and they're Judith. They're going to kill me tomorrow if I can't come up with 5 creative ideas. What one thing can you tell somebody in order to really get them in a more creative frame, to be more creative? What one thing out of all the stuff that you know would you tell someone to do?
The thing that comes up to me would be stop panicking because the brain can't work when it's scared.
Yeah, true.
And then I would ask, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And walk me through the reasons why you need to achieve that, so that they can be clear on where the problem really lies. Because most people try to fix a problem from halfway through, because they don't really ask the right questions. And quite often the real problem is much further back in the process. So an example would be, sometimes you might be speaking to somebody, they've got a problem because and when you talk to them, you realise that the problem is that they're getting into trouble. It's not because the thing is happening. So if they could avoid getting into trouble, then they'd be quite happy with the thing that's happening. So they might need to speak to their manager about, why it's needed or whatever it is, because that's where the issue is, not the issue with the process.
So that, if I understand you correctly, would be a great example of a sort of emergent thinking analysis of a situation.
Yes. You have to look at everything at the same time. And I think the more you practice doing that, and sometimes you need to do models with that, the better it becomes. So it becomes very instinctive. And I think that's the difference with Mavericks and conformists. Mavericks will always go, there's that. So Mavericks will ask loads of questions, and then the answer appears to be like magic. So they'll spend 90% of the time asking questions, 10% of the time finding the solution.
Right. Okay. Now, you just used the word mavericks, and I'm sure you must come across a lot of assumptions and things. I'm always interested to hear about the myths that people in these fields encounter that get in the way of their work. What are your bugbears, the myths that get in your way?
That the troublesome person who's really rubbish at the job is a maverick, so they should be left alone. is one that annoys me the most, because they're not. They're just a pain, and they need to be sacked.
Right. So just because they're a troublemaker doesn't make them a maverick.
That's right. And people make that mistake all the time. They'll say, this person's a maverick because they're really noisy, very obnoxious. And I'll say, are they good at their job? And they'll say, no. And I'll go, well, they're not a maverick. Because mavericks are good at it. They can be all those things, but they are good at what they're doing.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting one. Wasn't expecting that answer.
Sorry.
So now tell me, Judith, obviously a lot of what you're doing is focused on changing things for the future. I mean, why is that so important? What's so important about a maverick creative mindset in our world right now?
Because change is the new normal. Everything's constant. There is lots of things are happening now. And I think you need to be able to look at everything in the whole, because more than any other time, when you pull this lever, that lever over there happened. And you need to make sure that you've thought through the consequences of the actions before you take it, because the cycle of change is faster than before.
Right. Obviously, you're referring to the pace of change fueled by technology in particular.
Not just technology, but if you think about individuals, is what we're saying, in the next year or so, next 2-3 years, 70% of the population is going to be millennials. The next big part will be the next lot, Generation Z, and they want something different. They're not going to work in your organisation for the next 20 years. They're going to work for 2 years. And in 2 years, they need X, Y, Z happening. So there's going to be always a churn of individuals. And whereas the past, you would train people as a reward, now if you don't train them as a condition of employment, they're not coming anyway. So the change driven by people is extremely fast. And the assumptions that people make are different. So we're looking for organisations that are not just matrix, they're horizontal. So people will go to another company for advice while still working with you, by asking their friend in another network. And you need to be geared up for that. And it's very different from what baby boomers and Generation X's are expecting.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting answer. I want to pick up on what you just said about training. what training can one undertake? What should one be thinking about, educating oneself about when you're talking about being more creative, about being more maverick, about actually being able to profit from this rate of change rather than be crushed by it?
You need to work on yourself to begin with. So you need to work out, how do you deal with change and how do you accept change, and what are your emotional awareness and what are your triggers. And you need to reorientate yourself to understanding that you will learn for the whole of your life. You're never going to stop now. It's not like you can get a job and that's it, you can give it up. You will learn every single day. So part of it is you, and also to be very clear as to what you want and what you need within an organisation, whether it's your own, whether you're in the company, and probably not expecting one source to provide everything that you need.
Right, because that one path isn't such a thing anymore. You can't just press go and it's going to take care of itself.
No, whether that's a partner, your partner's not going to give you everything you need, your friends won't, your work won't. Everything now is a big blend, and it's understanding that blend and how it can work for you, which will make the difference.
Right, nice. So Judith, you've obviously got a lot of talents which you've put to work in various ways during your career, but do you have a hidden skill or talent that nobody else really knows about?
Ooh. A hidden talent. I think I understand quite deeply what's happening with people. So sometimes I know that people find that quite freaky, because I tend to understand. So for example, there's an entrepreneur that I know fairly well, and every now and again I'll phone him up and say, tell me about your new project. And he'll say, how did you know I've just decided to do X? And it's like, I don't know, I just know. And it's almost like, because you're so well connected, it's almost like you're a spider in the web, and that something in the web is tickling over there, right, and over there and over there, and then you go, I need to be at that point. So it's almost like you've got a spider sense.
Right. Jeez, my answer's gardening.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay, so let's talk about your vision for the future. How do you see, what kind of a world are you trying to create with this work that you do?
A world where people work for the greater good, that it doesn't matter where you were born, what you look like, what language you speak, that you're accepted for who you are and what you can deliver and bring to something. So that if you're in an organisation and you see something that's wrong, you will have the courage to say, no, I'm not doing that, regardless. So I would like to see more people standing up for what's right and returning us to that point where, social justice in all sense, whether that's equality, whether that's doing the right things in business, is standard. Okay,
nice. Good answer. Good answer. So if people head over to the maverickparadox.com right now, what are they going to see? What's going on over there?
Right, so the maverickparadox.com is a website that talks all about Mavericks. The maverickparadox.com is the magazine, so that's written by people like you. So interesting content about all different diversities of thought. And the other website, maverickparadox.co.uk, are the kind of things about Mavericks at work.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
And so if someone's interested in your work and your services, where's the best place for them to go to find out more?
maverickparadox.co.uk.
Okay, great. So, is there anything I should have asked you that I actually haven't, that you had this burning desire to talk about?
That Mavericks are generally misunderstood. They're far more playful than challenging, and even in the challenge, it's because it's fun and it's playful, and they are so curious. So a lot of the time, people think they're challenged because they're asking loads of questions. It's just because we want to know how to have fun with you.
I think that's a nice place to end. Judith, thank you so much for your time. It's been great having you on board. And I hope everyone who's watched this interview really enjoyed the conversation. It'll be live for the length of the summit. So if you want to come and listen to Judith's insights again and write down some of those tips that she gave, you're more than welcome to. If you're really enjoying all of these interviews, you can also buy our all access pass, which means you can come back and watch all the interviews as many times as you like for the next 12 months. And of course, you will find all the information for the all access pass down below this interview, as well as, of course, the link to Judith's website, where there may even be a little bit of a special offer goodie hidden in there for you if you go and have a good look. So Judith, thanks very much for your time. And I guess I don't really need to say this, but keep being a maverick.
Thank you very much, David.